The night sky above the alien world was torn apart by fire and smoke. A once proud vessel, shining with noble banners, now lay broken among the mountains, metal cracked and burned. The air filled with sparks and falling ash. Inside the wreckage, a young alien noblewoman struggled to breathe. She was highborn, raised in halls of crystal towers, never touched by dirt or fear. But now her fine gown was torn, her long silver-golden hair tangled with dust. Her heart pounded with anger and shame. Not fear, for she had been taught never to fear. She tried to stand, yet a fallen beam pinned her to the cold ground. The world shook as more debris fell. She closed her eyes, refusing to scream. For a noble never begged for help. But then, through the haze of smoke, heavy steps echoed. A figure moved closer, not an alien guard, not one of her own people, but a human. His armor was battered, his face marked with exhaustion, yet his eyes were steady. He looked at her, not with awe or fear, but with a calm decision. Without hesitation, he bent down and placed his hands on the beam. The noblewoman's eyes widened, outrage burning within. Her, how dare a human touch her? A highborn daughter of the great houses. She tried to protest, but her voice cracked. The beam lifted with a grinding sound, his muscles straining, his jaw tight. He did not speak. He only worked until she was free. The noblewoman pushed herself up. Trembling, her pride screamed louder than her pain. "You dare touch me," she whispered, her voice sharp even in weakness. The human only looked at her, his breath heavy. "You were trapped," he said simply, his voice firm but calm. Her hands clenched, fury rising. She wanted to strike him, to remind him of his place. But the ship groaned again, metal twisting, fire spreading. Another blast shook the ground, forcing her against him. For the first time, she felt the strength of his grip, not as insult, but as shield. Her heart rebelled, but her body leaned closer, desperate for safety. The human guided her through the smoke. He moved fast, steady, as if her anger meant nothing to him. Each time she stumbled, his hand steadied her. Each time she glared, he ignored the venom in her eyes. He was focused on survival, not on her pride. She hated him for it, and yet part of her felt unsettled. No guard of her people had ever held her with such certainty. No noble hand had ever lifted her from danger without seeking honor or reward. They reached the edge of the wreck. The night wind blew cold, carrying the bitter scent of burning metal. The stars above seemed to mock her fall. She turned to him, her voice sharp again. "I did not ask for your help," she said. The human raised his brow. "You did not have to," he answered. "I do not wait for permission to save a life." Her lips parted, stunned by the arrogance. No one spoke to her like that. No one dared. But before she could reply, the ground shook again. From the shadows, a distant roar echoed, not human, not safe. The human tightened his grip on his weapon, his gaze scanning the darkness. He stepped slightly in front of her. Without thought, without hesitation, she stared at his back. Her heart a storm of fury and confusion. She should have hated him, should have spat on the ground and walked away. But the fire behind them roared higher, and the night around them grew darker. Her chest tightened, not with anger this time, but with something she did not want to name. This human, this low-born creature, had dared to touch her, to save her, and though her pride raged, her life now rested in his hands. The noblewoman's story was no longer her own. It had become entwined with the human's path, and as the shadows closed in, she realized that the touch she despised might be the only thing keeping her alive. The human led her away from the burning wreck, his steps steady on the broken ground. Each sound of crumbling metal echoed behind them. But he never looked back. The noblewoman followed, her pride aching more than her body. She hated how close she had to walk to him, hated how his touch still lingered on her arm. Yet her legs trembled, and without his guidance, she might have fallen again. At last, they reached a ridge above the valley. From there, the ruins of her noble vessel glowed like a dying star. The banners of her house, once bright, now burned. In the flames, her chest tightened at the sight. Tears threatened, but she blinked them away. She could not cry in front of a human, never. Instead, she turned her anger toward him. "You should not have touched me," she said sharply. Her voice was cold, though her body still shook. The human glanced at her, unimpressed. "If I had not, you would still be buried under steel," he replied. His words were plain, without apology. She clenched her jaw, furious at his calm. "You are nothing," she hissed. "Your kind are beneath the houses. How dare you think yourself my savior?" But the human only sat down on the rocky ground, pulling off his pack. He did not answer her insult. Instead, he opened a ration pack and took a slow bite. His silence stung more than his words. The noblewoman folded her arms, refusing to sit. Her fine robes were torn. Dust clung to her hair. She hated being seen like this, hated being made helpless before him. But the hunger in her belly betrayed her pride. She tried to ignore it, tried to lift her chin higher. Then, to her shock, the human placed half of his food in front of her. "I have more," he said simply. "Eat." She froze, staring at the small offering. Her pride screamed to refuse, but her stomach growled louder. Finally, she snatched it from the ground. Her face burning, she turned away as she ate, refusing to let him see her shame. The night wind grew colder, carrying the sounds of distant movement. The human checked his weapon, sharp eyes scanning the shadows. She noticed how calm he remained, even in danger. It annoyed her, yet also unsettled her. Her guards, her servants, even her family, none had ever stood in silence like this. They always spoke with pride, with noise, with declarations of strength. But this human said little, and yet his presence felt solid. She hated that it gave her a strange sense of safety when the fire below dimmed. The human spoke at last. "Tomorrow we move," he said. "The raiders will return for survivors. We cannot stay." His voice carried certainty, as if his word decided her path. She lifted her chin higher. "You do not command me," she said, her tone sharp. He met her eyes, steady. "Then go alone," he answered. "I will not drag you." The words struck her like a blade. No one had ever spoken to her like that. No one had dared. She opened her mouth to strike him with more words, but silence fell between them, heavy, unbreakable. Through the long night, she sat apart, wrapping herself in torn silk. She stared at the human's back as he kept watch, her mind turned in circles. Why had he saved her if he cared nothing for her title? Why did his eyes hold no hunger for reward, no fear of her noble blood? Instead, he looked at her as though she were only someone to protect. It confused her, angered her, yet deep within, it planted a seed she could not name. When dawn came, the first light painted the mountains in silver and red. The human rose without complaint. Adjusting his gear, he glanced at her only once before setting off down the path. The noblewoman hesitated, her pride urging her to stay behind. But the sound of wings echoed in the valley, the cry of scavenger beasts circling the wreck. Her heart pounded, and without thinking, she stepped after him, her voice sharp, though softer than before. "You walk too fast," she said, as if blaming him for her choice. The human did not look back, but his pace slowed. And though her pride still burned, a strange warmth flickered inside her chest. She told herself it was anger. She told herself it was shame. But deep down, she knew it was something else. Something that frightened her more than the fire, more than the raiders. The human's touch still haunted her skin, the touch she hated, the touch she swore to despise. Yet as the shadows of the valley closed in once more, she felt regret begin to whisper inside her heart. And the whisper would not be silenced. The path through the valley was rough and broken. Sharp stones cut into the ground, and the wind carried the smell of ash. The noblewoman walked carefully, her fine shoes ruined by the dirt. Every step reminded her of the world she had lost. Her palace halls were gone, her guards gone, her banners turned to smoke. And beside her walked a human, steady and silent, The thought stung her pride more than the cuts on her hands. The human moved with ease, as if the path was familiar. His eyes studied every shadow, every crack in the rocks. From time to time he reached out, steadying her when she slipped. Each touch made her chest burn with anger and something she could not name. She wanted to shout, to push him away, but danger pressed in on every side. Her pride battled against the truth. Without him, she would not last. Hours passed. The sun climbed higher. The heat burned against her skin, and thirst clawed at her throat. She tried to walk tall, to hide her weakness, but her legs grew heavy at last. The human stopped by a cracked stone wall where a spring of water trickled. He filled a small container and handed it to her. She hesitated, her noble pride screaming refusal. Yet her lips were dry, her body weak. Finally she took it, not needing his eyes. The cool water slid down her throat, bringing life back into her veins. For a moment she almost whispered thanks, but the words froze, trapped behind pride. They rested in the shadow of the stone wall. The human ate another small ration, tearing it slowly, without a word. He placed a share near her again. She stared at it, then at him. His face was plain, marked with scars of travel, but there was no arrogance in his eyes. Only quiet strength. She took the food, eating silently, her mind storming. Why did he do this? Why give without demand? No noble of her house ever gave without expecting return. The thought unsettled her more than the ruined ship when they rose. Again, the human spoke for the first time in hours. "There is a shelter ahead," he said. "Old mining tunnels, abandoned, safer than open ground." His voice was calm, as if he did not question whether she would follow. She bristled at his certainty. "I decide where I go," she replied sharply. He glanced at her, his eyes steady. "Then decide quickly," he said, "because the sky is not safe." At that moment, a shadow passed overhead, wings beat against the air, dark shapes circling, predator beasts drawn to the smell of wreckage. Her throat tightened, her courage wavered. Without another word, she stepped closer to him, though she hated herself for it. Her feet followed his path. As they moved, she found herself studying him in secret. The way his shoulders bore the weight of armor, the way his steps never faltered. He was not noble, not trained in the ways of her people, yet his presence felt unshakable. A strange thought flickered through her mind. Perhaps strength was not in bloodlines or banners. Perhaps strength could be found in those she had been taught to despise. She shook the thought away, angry at herself, but it clung to her heart like an uninvited flame. By dusk, the mountains grew darker, the wind colder. The human found the tunnel entrance, half buried in stone. Inside, the air was cool, carrying the faint scent of rust. He lit a small light, casting shadows along the walls. The noblewoman stepped inside, her pride whispering that this place was beneath her. Yet her body sighed with relief at the safety of stone above her head. She sat against the wall, exhausted. The human set his gear down, checking the ground, making sure no danger lurked. When he finally sat across from her, silence filled the space. The crackling of his small fire was the only sound. She stared at him for a long moment. His hands were rough, his armor scratched, his face lined with fatigue. He looked nothing like the heroes sung in her people's songs. And yet, she realized, he had done more for her in one day than any noble ever had. Her lips parted, a word of thanks almost escaping. But pride locked her voice again. Instead, she whispered coldly, "Do not think this means you are my equal." The human's eyes lifted, calm as ever. "I do not need to be your equal," he said quietly. "I just need to keep you alive." The words struck her deeper than she expected. She turned away, hiding the confusion in her heart as the firelight flickered. The noblewoman felt her anger fade into something softer, something she feared to name. The touch she had hated still haunted her skin. But now, in the silence of the tunnel, she began to wonder. Perhaps it had not been an insult. Perhaps it had been something else entirely. and that thought would not leave her mind. The tunnel air was heavy and cold. The noblewoman sat in silence, her eyes fixed on the dim fire. The human rested across from her, sharpening a dull blade with calm focus. Every scrape of metal against stone echoed in the dark. She tried to hold her chin high, tried to keep her pride unbroken. But inside, her thoughts were restless. Why did his presence feel both unbearable and strangely safe? Why did his silence weigh more than her sharpest words? Outside, the night grew alive. The cries of beasts echoed through the valley. Low and hungry, the noblewoman shivered, pulling her cloak tighter. She would never admit it, but the sound unsettled her. The human looked up, his eyes catching the firelight. "They are closer than I thought," he said quietly. "We may have to move sooner." She bristled at his tone, as if he commanded her again. But before she could speak, the ground shook faintly beneath them. Dust drifted from the tunnel ceiling. The roar of engines rumbled from outside. Not beasts' raiders, the noblewoman's heart raced. These raiders had been the ones who attacked her vessel. If they found her alive, she would be a prize, a hostage, or worse. She pressed her back against the wall, fury mixing with fear. The human rose swiftly, dousing the small fire with his boot. Darkness filled the tunnel, except for the faint glow of his gear. "Stay here," he said firmly, moving toward the entrance. Her pride flared. "You do not order me," she hissed. Though her voice trembled, he turned his head slightly. His gaze sharp in the shadows. "Then survive without me," he replied, stepping into the night. The words stung, but they also struck truth. Alone, she had no weapon, no strength left. Her pride whispered she should not depend on him, but her heart knew she already did. Moments stretched, filled with the sound of distant voices and clattering boots. She crouched lower, her hands trembling. Every second felt like an hour. Then came a shout outside, followed by the crack of weapons. The tunnel shook with the echo. The noblewoman's breath caught. Her chest burned as she fought the urge to run to the entrance. The sounds of struggle grew louder, harsh grunts and crashing rock. And then silence. She waited, every heartbeat heavy with dread. Finally, the human stepped back inside, his chest rising with tired breaths. His armor was scraped, his weapon scarred, but his eyes remained steady. "They will not trouble us tonight," he said simply. Relief washed over her before she could stop it. But with it came confusion. She rose quickly, anger spilling to cover her weakness. "You risked everything," she snapped. "For what? You are a fool. You should have hidden." The human met her gaze, his voice calm but edged with steel. "And left you for them?" he asked. "Is that what you would have me do?" Her lips parted, but no words came. Her pride screamed yes, but her heart whispered no. She turned away, folding her arms. Her voice was softer when it came. "You act without thought, without respect." "I act because someone must," he replied. The words pierced her like no blade could. All her life, she had been surrounded by ceremony, by titles, by rules, and here stood a man who ignored them all. He acted not for honor, not for reward, but simply because it was needed. Her chest tightened with a feeling she did not understand. She remembered the first time he touched her, the outrage she felt. But now, she remembered how strong and steady his arms had been. The memory no longer filled her with fury, but with something far more dangerous. The human sat again, his eyes scanning the dark tunnel entrance. His face was unreadable, yet his presence filled the space. The noblewoman watched him secretly, her anger crumbling. She told herself it was only gratitude, nothing more. But when his eyes met hers across the dim light, her heart leapt, and she looked away quickly. Ashamed of the warmth inside her, the night dragged on, heavy with silence. She could not sleep, for every sound outside kept her awake. But deeper than fear was another restless storm. Her pride clung to the belief that she was above him, yet her heart knew the truth, that without him, she would already be lost. And perhaps, she thought in secret, there was more to his touch than insult. Perhaps it had been the touch of someone who refused to let her fall. By dawn, Her pride was cracked, her certainty shaken. The noblewoman sat in silence as the human prepared to move again. For the first time, she did not argue. For the first time, she followed without words. Her heart was changing, though she fought it with every breath. The breaking point had come, and she was no longer the same.